space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilization, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Greetings, salutations, and welcome to Retrek. I'm Captain Jim, and with me, of course, is Admiral Elliot.
Hi there.
And where the Dominion War is, well, it's still not officially been declared, but we've got a two-part Dominion War episode, so we're spending all this week talking about Deep Space Nine, which is going to be really good fun. This is a good one. Before we get into actually talking about the search, I just wanted to give some background on this one. This might have been my greatest Star Trek day ever, because this came out on VHS in the UK the same day that Generations came out in the cinema. So I remember I finished school, went and got my mum to take me to see Generations, and on the way we went to WH Smith's, and that was when they still sold videos, and actually sold out and had competitive prices. But so I got the DS9 video, so I had that ready, went to cinema, watched Generations, got home, watched the opening season premiere of DS9. That was a really good day. That's how
It is a good opening. It is a good premiere.
Yeah, it's better than Generations, I think, in retrospect. But at the time, I were buzzing on Generations because it were, you got Captain Kirk and Picard, but yeah,
that's it.
It is. No, it is a good one. Is the search, and we said a little bit about this last week, didn't we? You do really get the feeling of Act 1 of DS9's done now, and this is something new. It builds on what we've done. But
all that sort of all the groundwork of who these people are and rumours and all that we've heard and fairy tales. It's all we're going to see exactly who they are this time.
And these episodes show this is what the show's going to be going forward. This is the tones there now.
Yeah, it's like we were still used to very episodic TV at this time. We didn't realise that we were really into a 5-year story arc.
No, exactly. That's it. And I think we can probably put some of it down to this is when Ira Stephen Bear took over as showrunner. And obviously, he's incredibly associated with DS9 now. But people forget that he wasn't actually the showrunner for seasons 1 and 2. No. But if you look at when he did take over, was it Michael Miller or Rick Berman? It were one of them two.
Rick Berman, because he went on to do he left DS9 to do Voyager.
To do Voyager, exactly. So. Yeah, I think you can tell there's lots of changes in tone and changes direction and everything. There's also a change straight away. First scene opening, Dax has got a new hairstyle. That ain't gonna last long, is it? So I think we get it these 2 episodes.
I'm not sure. It probably lasts longer than Kira's hairstyles. Because her hairstyles change all the time.
Kira's do change all the time, but this is the only time they experimented with a different hairstyle for Dax, and it quickly goes back to the old one. So we start off, and it's all sort of very bleak, the tone straight away, isn't it? It's like we're running simulations, and the Jem'Hadar are going to take the station in 2 hours. I think one of them says, that's actually general.
He goes, that's not long enough for help to even get here from Voyager. And I'm thinking, hold on, in the first episode, they were actually in orbit of Voyager. And they only moved for about 15 minutes, the station, at impulse speed. So why is it suddenly going to take 2 hours for the Bajoran spacecraft to get there?
So Brian didn't O'Brien do something clever with the gravitron stabilizers
he altered the
station.
He altered the mass of the station, so
I think they've said a few times, haven't they, that the transport to Bajor's 5 hours, but you always assumed that was like at quite low warp speeds. I always assumed if you're going warp 9, it doesn't take long at all.
Well, as far as I'm aware, they're still in the same system, so it'd be impulse speed.
Yeah.
But 5 hours is almost thrusters. Look how fast.
True.
We saw in the motion picture, didn't we? The Enterprise leaving the solar system, and look how fast it left the solar system.
Straight away, yeah. I think it's one of them, and Bajor is exactly the distance that it needs to be for whatever the plot is that week.
Yeah.
It depends.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's episodes where they actually beam from the station to Bajor.
There probably is, yeah. And sometimes it's so-and-so's on the way from Bajor and it's going to take however long, but they're running the simulations and it's 2 hours is generous, they're going to wipe us out. And this actually ties into, by the time we get to next season's premiere, The Way of the Warrior, this is the start of, we need to tool the station up then, so it's actually ready for a bit of a fight. And obviously no spoilers, but we definitely get there by the next season premiere. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. It's quite a good character scene as well at the start, because you get Kira's thinking of it totally in militia terms. She's right, well, we'll go and hide in the air vents and we'll we'll do this and we'll do that. And they did do that in the previous season premiere, the Circle trilogy, the Homecoming, Circle, Siege. They end up crawling around in the air vents in that one, don't they? But that's only fighting off a not very well organised Bajoran rabble rousers. Basically, they're not they're not fighting off a major military force. It's not the Jem'Hadar.
Could be anywhere on the station. Walk through shields. Can probably scan every single inch of the station.
Exactly, yeah. I don't think hiding in the maybe Kira's just been watching Die Hard a bit too much and she's thinking that's how you do it.
Well, that's it. Die Hard will never die.
That's it. No, exactly. They'll still be watching Die Hard at Christmas in Star Trek.
They will.
Bajorans might watch it for Bajoran Gratitude Festival or whatever it is. And Dax goes the science route, we could collapse the wormhole, and that'll obviously tie in later on in the episode. But the big thing of the teaser, obviously, is that we get the cloak ship coming in and we get the reveal of the Defiant, which I love the Defiant. I think it's an awesome ship.
It is. The thing is, though, what I like about, actually, between the end of Season 2 and the start of Season 3 here, they've actually explained that there's been a passage of time. Cisco's been back on Earth, and
he's had briefings.
I know for stories that it takes different amounts of time to get to Earth, but it's meant to take weeks at high warp to get from where they are to Earth. Yeah. So he spent weeks going to Earth. He spent weeks in briefings, and he spent presumably he spent weeks getting the Defiant out of mothballs.
Yeah,
and then weeks getting back.
Yeah. And so, you're right. There is this passage of time that's established, and we get that nice thing later on with Cisco and Jake, where they're talking about how they've started thinking of the station as home now, and again, they're starting to bring out facets to Cisco's character that we've not really had. He's got this African art collection, and
it's 1900 years old.
Yeah, exactly. And I get the sense that this is probably something Avery Brooks was pushing for, to get Cisco more in touch with his sort of ancestry and everything. And I think it is a good feature of the character, but it's something we've not really had up until this point. And I like that they're starting to add things like that, in a bit more of a sense of.
we've got this father and son here, so let's show some of the family and the personal stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, what's the point? Why did we do it as a father and son if we're not going to explore that?
Yeah, exactly. And it's really good that they're starting to bring this in. And I feel like Avery Brooks, he's getting more settled into it by this point as well. He seems a lot more comfortable as Sisko. And I think part of that is as Sisko's starting to blend into Avery a bit more, we're starting to get more of his personality coming through. And we get that. Yeah,
we're starting to get Avery Brooks as opposed to Sisko at times.
Exactly, because I think they give him a disservice when they hired him, because it was like, right, we want you for this role, but we want you to shave your beard off and we want you to grow some hair.
Well, the reason they did that was that he'd just come off being the main guy in Spencer for Hire.
And
they didn't want him to be and they didn't want him to be recognisable as that character. They wanted the actor and they loved how he acted, but they didn't want people looking at him and thinking that's Spencer for Hire now running the station.
Yeah,
they wanted it to be, this is Benjamin Sisko, and that's the official reason that's put out for it.
Yeah, and I don't doubt that probably is the reason. But once they start letting him be himself, I think his performance gets a lot better because he's.
It does.
He's much.
The interesting thing is, he was actually ahead of Patrick Stewart at one point for the role of Picard.
Was he? That'd have been an interesting.
Yeah, and so it was. Picard was quite. Patrick Stewart was actually quite low down because Roddenberry initially didn't like the thought of having a bald Englishman.
No, I remember that. Yeah, I mean, that'd have been an interesting.
Avery Brooks was like in the top 3 or 4 choices for Picard originally.
Wow, that'd have been something else.
Which would have also probably meant that he wouldn't have done Spencer for Hire, so straight away you'd have had him with the beard and the shaved head. So you wouldn't have had a bald Englishman, you'd have had a bald
American,
African American.
Yeah,
Black
exactly. That would have been a bit of a different character. I wonder if they'd have wanted him to be French still. Do a French accent. I mean, we know Patrick Stewart can't do a French accent, and by his own admission, I'm not slating Patrick Stewart, but.
Well, he's from just down the road from us, isn't he? None of us can do a proper French accent.
No, exactly, yeah. Huddersfield lad. So we get, some nice, background to the Defiant. It was built to beat the Borg. But obviously never got used for that. Never got used for it yet. We're gonna see that.
We do see it later.
But, it's good that they give an explanation for why it exists.
Officially, it's an escort ship.
Yeah, exactly.
But this ship was built for one purpose only: to fight the Borg. This is a war ship. But what I find interesting about this is, what gets this. It was mentioned that the Federation are responsible for this war. The Federation pushed it.
Absolutely.
And last time we saw, the Jem'Hadar came through and they told them, you are not welcome in the Gamma Quadrant. Mm-hmm. We consider it a hostile act. Stay away. If it was normal space, it'd be like Voyager distance away, so 60, 70 years to get there. You wouldn't be coming here. You're using a wormhole and trespassing in our territory.
Yeah.
We don't want you in here. So Sisko's gone back to Starfleet to brief them on all this. And the answer is, I know, let's send him back with the most powerful warship we've got to go back to the Gamma Quadrant, because obviously that's not going to cause any problems, is it?
Yeah, we want you to go in with this ship. And, we'll talk about who draws first blood a little bit later on, but, So, it's not the most peaceful. It's one of them where DS9, the whole thing of the Federation Dominion War, you've got to kind of look the other way, because if you get hung up on how it started, there is no way the Federation are the good guys in this.
No, they're not. The Federation were invading their territory, and it's we saw, Dax said it's point blank, didn't she, last week? We don't care what you say, you're not going to stop us exploring.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and we will track this as we go through, but and we're not saying we're not on the Federation's side. We want the Federation to win the war, but it's
the Federation is culpable in this.
Definitely, yeah. So we meet the new characters. Then we get two. We get Eddington, who obviously has a really good story arc coming up.
Yeah, we might have to do a bit like what we've done with Barclay and actually do an Eddington's story arc, because a lot of his story doesn't actually fall within the Dominion War.
No, but
so it might be interesting at some point for us to actually do Eddington's story.
We'll do like a Maquis series, I think, at some point, and follow all the Maquis stories. But we also get Sub-Commander Tyrul, who she'll last about as long as Dax's new hairdo. We don't, because this is a great idea. You've got a cloaking device that the Romulans have allowed you to use, special dispensation to use it, but they want someone on board to keep an eye on it.
They want their own sub-commander there to make sure that the technology isn't stolen or spied upon.
That's a great setup. It's a great idea to get this Romulan character in there. So where does she go after this episode? I don't think we ever see her again. I wonder if it was the actress unavailability or something.
Well, surely you could have it that she could get called away, and if that actress isn't available, you can bring another actor or actress to fill that role.
With Zial, I don't think the same person played Zial more than once, so, that became almost a joke who played Zial every time. And we get the tension with Odo straight away, like, he thinks Eddington's going to replace him, and you get quite a cool scene with Sisko where Sisko's like, no, I fought to keep you, but let's be honest, you don't play by the rules. You do, you rub people up the wrong way with the way you do things. So
and he goes, and there's been these security leaks. If Starfleet had let me do it my way, that's the problem. You fight against Starfleet's way. That's what they don't like.
And the thing is, again, this is what DS9 does so well, is they're both right. Like, Odo is right. If he did do it his own way, he'd be absolutely fine. But you can't always be that idealistic, especially when you've got to work as part of a team. And it's one of them. You could come down either side of it.
It's that sort of like, I want you as the station security, but if you're not willing to follow Starfleet protocols, you're not going to be able to be the security for the Starfleet matters.
Yeah, you've got to
you either follow Starfleet ways and you can do it, or you don't play by the rules and you can't do it.
Exactly. And Kira tries to sort of smooth it over a little bit, where she's like, the Bajoran government want you to go, and obviously everyone can see through that, including Odo, because he's like, no, I don't think they do. It's obviously what you're going for there. There's a great scene with Sisko and Quark where Sisko wants Quark on the mission, and that's great. That's picking up threads of the continuity earlier on.
Yeah, it's you've had contact with the Dominion, and we're wanting to try and make diplomatic contact and make peace. And
and I love how he tries to drop Rom in it. He's like, Rom did most of the negotiation. He didn't. We've watched it.
Rom wasn't even there.
No, Rom wasn't even there. It was you and Pell. I'm surprised Clark didn't try to go under the bus as well. Like, go find Pell and go do it.
Yeah, take Rom. He's got a son. I've got a business to run.
Exactly, I've got more important things. And I love how much joy Sisko takes out of the fact that he's got the scepter and he slams the scepter down. He makes him kiss it, and he just sort of smiles when he goes out. It's great. And again, another really good scene with Dax and Sisko. Like, they're basically talking about, is this a suicide mission or not? And Dax obviously has got all this background to Sisko because she knows him from when she was Curzon. And she's like, I've not seen you this passionate about anything since Jennifer died. And I think that is what we were talking about with how Avery Brooks's performance has gone up a notch. Like, I think it's told in the first couple of series.
Like, he hasn't got his beard yet, and he hasn't shaved his hair yet, but you can tell there's a bit of a difference coming.
It's starting to come out, yeah. And I think they did say, you're in a period of mourning for your wife and you're going to be a bit detached and everything. But now that they're starting to open him up, and it's great that we acknowledge that even within the show, Dax is picking up on it and everything. And then there's this thing about being an admiral that crops up a couple of times. And it seems like Sisko, when he was younger, was trying to be all a career guy. I want to be an admiral, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, which, like... To be fair, I think anyone coming out of an education system at first, and he's come through the academy, you think, I'm going to get to the top in my field. And coming out of Starfleet Academy, the top in your field is an admiral.
Yeah, but as we know from our history of Star Trek captains, that's not really what the captains want. They never like being an admiral.
Well, although it's not a captain, he's a commander still.
No, he's still a commander.
He actually gets command of the Defiant, but this is his first command of a starship.
Yeah, it is technically, yeah. And that does come back a little bit later on. They throw that out, but it's this realization that no, that's not what he actually wants. On the Defiant, then we've got Bashir's bitching about the sick bay because there's next to no sick bay. And it's quite cool, the Defiant. Like, if you look at like the schematics of it, it is really tiny. There's literally the bridge.
Oh,
the bridge is most of the ship, and then there's an engine room and crew quarters, and that's
and the crew quarters aren't anything massive. Mm. It's nothing even like what we see on Voyager, and Voyager's a small ship compared to the Galaxy class.
But that's it, the Defiance. It's tiddly, it's really, really compact. So we see the Defiant undocked from the station. Now, this is one where you've kind of got to do a bit of headcanon to make it work going forward. Because obviously, we use a lot of stock shots of the station rotating in space and establishing shots. But we know the Defiant is always docked at the pylon. So, we have to headcanon that whenever we see the station and the Defiant's not there, it must be because the pylon it's docked at is the one that's facing away from the camera.
Yeah.
It just happens that that's where the camera's pointing every time we don't see it.
Does that alter later on in the scene? I'm sure that alters later.
They do a few shots where they've got the Defiant dock, so it depends which establishing shot they use for the scene. But we have to assume that quite a lot of the time it's docked on the other side of it. Odo and Quark, where Quark says, it's Bashir, isn't it? Says something to him, and then Quark says, "I'll take that as a personal insult." Bashir just says, "You should." I love that. I love how everyone's got this thing with Quark. Like, you know that they all like him, really, but they all give him a load of grief, which is brilliant.
Yeah. Like you've got to look at it. Like you're meant to sort of. Beyond Starfleet side, that Quark's a bit of a criminal, but Quark actually steps up a lot of the time and does the right thing.
He does, and he's like your lovable rogue, isn't he, Quark? Very occasionally he does cross the line and do stuff that is really bad, but it's not often. And Odo in this one is even more riled up with him. He even sort of growls at him at one point in this.
Yeah. Well, Odo's put in quarters with him, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And he don't want him watching him while he's reverting to his liquid state.
Like, we have had this before, though, haven't we? That I don't think it's just Quark. Odo doesn't anybody seeing him.
Yeah, he didn't like anybody.
Seeing him revert to his liquid state. And he doesn't like that helplessness he has. I think he feels helpless. Because he has to go in a liquid state and he can't... And that's it, he's stuck there.
That's no doubt, like, you know, if we were relating it to a human thing, it's childhood trauma, basically, because when he did it when he was an infant, Dr. Mora were poking and prodding about in it, you know. So I can totally understand, like, I don't want to fall asleep while this guy's here who could be doing anything to me, you know, it's bad enough when I'm awake.
He's going to electrocute me to make me change shape.
Exactly. So, yeah, and obviously, as the episode goes on, we get more insight into why Odo's crankier than usual, but he's definitely not in a good place at this point in the story. And we get the bit with the Jem'Hadar, so the Jem'Hadar turn up, and then it's good how the Romulan says, oh, it's because we emit this variance. And they're like, oh, we didn't know that. And like, no, of course you don't know that. We don't want you knowing that about it.
But we can alter it.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, typical Romulan sort of sneakiness. And the Karama that we never saw them in Rules of Acquisition, but now that we do see them, these guys are pretty much the Gamma Quadrant Ferengi, aren't they, the way they act?
Yeah, we see him in another episode, don't we, later on?
Yes, we do. And I like how he tries to sell Kira's earring when the Karama guy's looking at it.
Well, he's looking at everything, isn't he? He's looking at all the equipment and just going, oh, it's so-and-so alloy. Oh, it's so-and-so. And then he looks at her earring. Oh, this is...
And Quack's just like, done, right? And it's through him that we find out they need to speak to the Vorta and they get the map. And this is when Odo cops for this nebula. And this is when he starts acting really weird. Like he's just sort of staring at it. He's like the Omarian Nebula.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is going to be a big...
This plays into later.
Yeah, it does. So it's all good, all the way they're setting it up and everything. There's also a bit, and this is one of Sisko's weird tics that he has, and he does this, I think, 3 or 4 times across the whole show, but I always remember it. When he gets a coffee that's too hot or something, he makes this really weird noise where he sort of goes, ah! And he does that in this. And it's one of them that once you tune into it, you spot it, but it's not just...
You notice it.
But he does do it a few times. Dax and O'Brien beam down, and the Jem'Hadar spot them, and ultimately they have to, the crew have to leave them there and everything.
Yeah, but this is there's obviously something here, isn't there? Because they've been down to this research station, which doesn't have a red thing, which we do have a picture of this week.
We do have a picture. We promised last week that for anyone watching on the live stream, we would have a picture of the red thing.
The most important object in the universe.
There it is. So anyone who's listening...
But we haven't got a clue what it does.
Yeah. Anyone who's listening on the podcast, I apologise you can't see it, but it's the famous red device that crops up a lot, not just in Star Trek, in everything. But you're right, the relay station doesn't have one, but what it does have is a sinister point of view camera that you can tell someone's watching them because of the way the camera's moving, which is like a true film technique.
And it's really odd, isn't it, that like they're there to, like, we'll look at this computer equipment and it's like, and O'Brien's there, well, that was very easy to get into.
Yeah, it's clearly...
access and...
There are clues as to what's going to happen in this episode. It's... because if you watch this bit, when you rewatch it, knowing what's coming, you don't see them get caught, but clearly with the movie camera, somebody's grabbed them at this point.
Somebody's what? Yeah. Because as soon as they try to sort of send the data back up to the Defiant, don't they?
Yeah.
And the moment they press send, the alarms go off and
then back on the
shields go up and...
Yeah, exactly. Back on the ship then, Sisko orders Odo up to the bridge, but Odo's just having none of it, so he's thinking about his nebula. And Kira goes down, has a row with him, and that's when the Jem'Hadar attack, and we get the first battle featuring the Defiant. So again, anybody
overpowered.
Exactly. Anyone who's watching the live stream, this is what I like to call the blammy phasers, because up until this point in Star Trek, it's always been like just one beam of a phaser. But this is like a machine gun phaser going off.
And it just rips stuff apart because they hit a Jem'Hadar ship, don't like we saw what the ships did. Jem'Hadar did to the
Odyssey last time.
Odyssey last week, and that the Odyssey was hardly denting them, and the Defiant fires at it and just shoots straight through it.
Yeah, which is great. This is how you show your new ship is a double hard ship, you know.
Yeah,
you've seen them take on a Galaxy class ship without breaking a sweat, but the Defiant just absolutely literally obliterates one of them. Then they beam on board, and this is where we get Sisko as a badass, possibly for like the first time. Really, like he really wails on these Jem'Hadar guys. It's a really for a TV PG Star Trek syndicated afternoon 5 o'clock showing, whatever. This is a pretty brutal fight, you know. It don't.
Yeah, well, what time? It used to go out at 6 o'clock here in the UK, didn't it? On BBC Two. When we still only had 4 channels.
Well, exactly, and they used to, like, when Sky picked it up, they used to show them at, like, 8 in the morning, you know, you'd have it on at 8, and then it'd be on at 6 in the evening sort of thing, so it'd be interesting to see, actually, whether some of DS9 was ever censored, because, it's quite, I mean, it's not, it's not...
I know some of TNG was censored.
Yeah, I wonder...
but TNG was censored for political reasons because we didn't get to see the one in, I can't remember the name of the episode.
Oh, the high ground.
One of the episodes, and Picard goes about terrorist organisations that have won, and he mentions and he says the IRA.
Yeah,
and exactly. That was censored. That was not allowed.
That episode never aired. For a long.
I'm not sure if it's never.
I think
it's said now with Sky and you can watch it on Netflix, but it was banned in the UK for 20 odd years, I'd say.
Probably
a long time it was banned.
Probably will be again soon with all this Brexit stuff going on. You don't know. Then what? One thing I wanted to point out with this: Odo's fighting some of the Jem'Hadar. Should the Jem'Hadar be attacking Odo, given what we find out about Odo later on?
Well, I think at this point, yes, they will.
Right.
Because they'll just assume that it's from the Alpha Quadrant.
Right. So you're saying they won't know that he's a changeling?
Yeah. At this point in time, I don't think the Jem'Hadar. I don't think even the founders are aware of Odo, of who he is.
Possibly not.
From what's said in the next episode, I think at this point that they just think he's just another alien, another species from the Alpha Quadrant. He's just aboard the Defiant. I know it changes later, but I think it's after this episode 2. That changes, and that order will have gone out like that from the founders.
Okay, I'll go with that. What we do here, then, this is another little clue as to the twist we're trying to get away with in the next episode. What happens is, we stay with Kira, we stay in Kira's point of view, so we see Kira get knocked out, and then Kira wakes up. And so we're following her through. And it makes sense the first time you watch it, because you're like, we're just sticking with Kira and seeing what's going on with her.
Yeah.
But if you watch it again, it's a clear delineation between what's real and what's not. We're sticking with Kira because we can't stick with the other characters. We need to have a break in the action before we can...
But it is very clever.
Yeah, it is.
Clever how they do it. I like though when she comes through doing the shuttle and all that, and she goes, "Where are we?" And he goes, "We're in a shuttle." And You were knocked unconscious. I managed to get you to a shuttle and we escaped. That's fair enough. Okay, where are we then? We're nearly at the so-and-so, American Nebula. And she goes, why didn't you set a course for the station, back to the station? Well, you didn't seem to object at the time.
Yeah, a bit naughty.
I was unconscious.
A little bit naive of Kira. It's like, clearly he's set a course for this nebula. If you're not seeing how he's been staring at it. This is...
Yeah, there's something going on in there, how he's acting. He's acting not like Odo.
Yeah, he has got a thing for this nebula. It's kind of like when a dog picks up a scent of something, and you can shout at them, you can squeak the toy, you can blow the whistle, and they'll just have absolutely none of it because they're pursuing the scent. And that is pretty much exactly what's going on from what we find out.
Yeah.
Obviously, they beam down, and the big reveal is, out of the big puddle comes another changeling who looks very similar to Odo.
Well, we get a few of them, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. So again, if you're watching on the live stream, there's a picture of the changelings. What's your take on why they all look like Odo? Do you think they're doing it to make him feel at home, or do you think this is almost... Is this what they look like when they were solids?
I think this is what they look like when they were solids. And
so do I, yeah.
When everyone's been saying to Odo, you struggle with faces.
Yeah.
He isn't. He's actually doing what a normal face is to him.
That's what I think too. I think
because we've seen him. He can mimic animals and the fur and everything. So why is he struggling so much with faces? I don't think he is. I think this is how they used to look.
Yeah.
It's been speculated, hasn't it? If you watch the Next Gen episode,
chase.
Which one? The chase where they all find out that they're related to the same species.
Yeah, and it's the same actress, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the same actress, but also the makeup's almost identical.
It's very similar, yeah.
It's speculated that they're actually who seeded the whole galaxy.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. And that's a great episode, and we will come to that one at some point. But it's never said explicitly. But I think it's generally accepted in Star Trek circles that species is the one that they reference in the original series when they talk about the preservers and this business. So I'm happy with that, and I think it makes a lot of sense if that's the actual explanation. So in part 2 then, first of all, obviously, Odo's bombarding them with questions straight away, even to the point that Kira's like, stop interrogating them, these are your people. But he's like, okay, so how was this and what happened there? And we find out that he was an infant when he was sent out, and that they sent out, did they say 100?
Yeah, they sent out 100 of them.
But they weren't expecting him back for another 3,000 years.
No, another 300 years.
Another 300, sorry. But they also say...
it's only because of the anomaly you've arrived sooner.
Yeah, and they say, you've been out there a long time, so we don't know how old Odo is, really.
No.
So, it's implied that he's a lot older than we think he is.
Yeah, but it's odd, isn't it? If he was just surviving as a liquid previously...
Yeah.
And he's only got conscious recollection since the time with the Bajorans.
Yeah, exactly.
What was the point beforehand if he'd been out hundreds of years previously?
Yeah.
What's the point if he's a liquid and not taking anything and learning anything?
He can't remember anything, so he can't report it back. Yeah. Or is that just something that's peculiar to Odo? Do most of them usually retain the memories, whereas for whatever reason, Odo's... You know what? Okay, here's my explanation.
Maybe Go on.
So, Odo got sent out, floating around in space. He did all his stuff for hundreds of years. Then he got dragged through the wormhole, and either something in the wormhole erased his memory, or the prophets erased his memory for some reason. And then when he comes to the Alpha Quadrant, they find him, and that's when his memories start up.
I was thinking that maybe it's something to do with, like, they can survive in deep space as a frozen liquid, and they're literally sent out as a capsule. So yeah, it could have been sent hundreds of years ago, literally as a capsule,
and just floated.
And then until he enters, and literally just floating as a solid object. Nothing changing.
Yeah,
and then when he's being found by the Bajorans, he's started to. Then he's come alive and started to.
Yeah,
started to be.
Well, yeah, we never quite get answers on it, but I don't mind, sometimes where it does leave a bit of ambiguity. It's nice to be able to speculate on Odo the early years.
Yeah.
Then we're introduced to the idea of the Great Link, and this is where we find out how different Odo is to the rest of them, because he's always keep yourself to yourself, not very sociable, and we find out that the society is actually literally, physically the opposite of that, because they're all linked together, and she wants the link with him.
She wants him to link, and one of the others says he's not ready. He's been away from us for too long.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is odd, because they've already said that he's 300 years early.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
so
maybe like
unless they've got
this one,
unless it
go on.
Yeah, no, it just doesn't make sense unless he's not discovered enough and aged enough and become enough of himself, because he's only maybe 20 years old as sentient.
Or maybe it's that this male changeling, maybe he's a bit of a Jobsworth, and like he's the one who's in charge of. He makes the orientation video that you've got to watch when you come back. It's like they get a celebrity in there, and it's like, so you've been away for 300 years. Here's how you readjust. And she's like, no, you don't have to watch your video. We can just link with him. He's like, I've spent hours making that,
Yeah.
So maybe I'm going with that. But Odo does say that he's home once he's linked with them. And then we cut to Bashir and Sisko's giving this sort of almost going down with a ship kind of log, isn't he? Like we're running out of air. It's like in Avengers Endgame where Tony Stark's doing that. It's almost exactly like that.
You're not going to say that somebody who wrote Avengers Endgame watched DS9, are you? And maybe got the idea from Sisko.
Well, you never know. You never know. And instead of Captain Marvel, though, we get O'Brien and Dax find them. And she says, big things are happening on Deep Space Nine. What I'm interested in as we go through this episode is, when you first watched it, when did you start to think something was up?
I first thought something was up when they were excluding the Romulans.
Yeah.
It seemed really odd to be doing this for the entire Alpha Quadrant. Well, it's Alpha and Beta, and the Klingons are involved, and the Cardassians, and all the big powers. But we're going to totally ignore the Romulans. Well, that's asking for trouble.
Yeah,
and even when she's saying that, no, you can't it'll be war if you do this without involving the Romulans when you're making a deal for the Quadrant.
Yeah.
And they're still sort of not interested. That was when I knew something was wrong.
Yeah, I think it's like you say, it's around that point in the episode where what the characters are doing, apart from our main crew, stops making sense. Like it does make sense up to a certain point, but then you just think that, this ain't how these people would act. This ain't what would happen, and you do realise something's up.
like, there's actually a hint even earlier, and it's when Garrett greets the Doctor when they first get back to the station, and he's sort of like, "Oh, I've had a great day as a tailor, or is it a spy?" And and he's out of character. Because Garrick never ever admits to being a spy. It's a lot later that we get that Garrick actually was a spy, but Garrick is just a simple tailor.
Yeah, you're
that has
right.
upset somebody. He's upset somebody in the Obsidian Order. That's why they've sort of what do you call it?
There are clues that it's not.
There's clues when you know what it is.
Yes.
But when you're asking me when I realised something was wrong, it was at the Romulan part.
No, I think.
But there's clues a lot earlier.
I agree with that. Yeah. Back on the Changeling planet, then we get Odo sort of exploring around and everything, and there's the obelisks from the alternate, the ones that they find on that planet.
Yeah.
So there we go. You see, we were right to cover that episode as well. You won't see them again, but, at least they're there, so we know that they were definitely put there by the Changelings.
But it's like that. The female Changeling has told Odo to enjoy the garden.
Yeah.
And all that is what they call it. And he goes, "But I've changed shape into these sort of things before." She goes, "No, once you change shape, you understand the thing."
Yeah.
And he says himself after he's been doing it, he goes, "I've been rocks and I've been trees and I've been this." And I don't feel like I understand what being a rock is anymore.
No,
I understand how to be that shape, but I get no changing. And I think she's just stalling him at this point.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, but then on the other hand, it's something that Odo never really gets, because when he meets that other changeling, and that's not till season 7, that changeling's like, "Well, we can turn into fire, and we can," and Odo's like, "What? Yeah. I never knew we could do that." And she, like, again, there's hints that they're not as altruistic as they might be meaning to seem. Straight away, Kira says, "Oh, they don't trust me," and she's like, "Nope, we don't." She doesn't even try and hide it. She's like, "Nope, we don't trust.
We don't trust solids."
And then back on the station, in inverted commas, Cisco meets with Borath, who's another Vorta. And I think this was meant to be Eris originally, that they couldn't get the actress.
Yeah. But
this is one of the first instances.
It doesn't say it's a Vorta. He's playing off as if he's a founder.
Yeah, he's pretending that they're the founders. And it's all about we're gonna do a treaty, and as it goes along, it becomes clear that it's not really a treaty. It's pretty much the Federation's going to get taken over by the Dominion.
Yeah.
Or the Dominion's going to be part of the Federation. It's pretty much what they end up doing to Cardassia.
The Federation will become part of the Dominion.
Yeah, they're pretty much dangling that there. And like you say, Tarul's kicking off and everything. And we get Admiral Nechayev comes into it. And she's one of these recurring characters, like she's been in 3 or 4 Next Gen episodes. And it's always stuff that's around the Cardassian border, like she was in Chain of Command, she was in Preemptive Strike.
Yeah, she's obviously like the local, like, you've got to imagine that there's a lot of admirals, and she's obviously the admiral for that sector.
Yeah, and that's what's really good about...
And it is good that they have the continuity there.
Having 2 shows running at the same time, you can go, right, well, we've got an admiral who does that job, so let's get her in. Having said that, I do think this is the last time you see her, but you still recognise her when you see her. You're like, I remember Picard around with her. So. And they seem to be... This is what I mean about people sort of acting in a not very believable manner, because she's like, oh, well, who'd be able to stand up to us if it was a Federation-Dominion alliance? And it's like, that's not how the Federation thinks of things.
Yeah, and she's also sort of like trying to bribe Cisco. Like, well, for helping in this, you'll be an admiral. You'll get your admiral position wanted.
And see, that's again. I think this is meant to be a clue because earlier on we found out that's not really what Sisko wants.
No, this is something from when he was younger.
Yeah, but if you just read his personnel file or whatever, you might think that. So,
or if you're reading his mind, and because this has been mentioned, it might be fresh in his mind.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's quite cool and quite a subtle moment that like Sisko could be like, well, actually, I don't want that. So why is she?
Yeah.
Why is she coming out with that?
Why is she dangling that?
Yeah, maybe there's something.
And I've never sort of mentioned it to Starfleet Curzon you, but
exactly, yeah. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Again, like you say, there's all these little clues littered about. Back on the Changeling planet, then Odo links with the female Changeling again, and this time it's blatantly sexual. Like it's just, don't do it in front of Kira, guys. Yeah.
This is liquid sex.
Yeah, exactly. There's no two ways about it, and certainly René Auberjonois' facial expressions do a good job of telling the story. So, Kira's been off trying to send a sneaky message to Sisko, and there's quite a funny bit where she comes back to tell Odo what's going on, and she's like, "Are you even in the gad? Am I talking to a tree? What?"
Yeah.
And then she finds the mysterious doorway that she can't scan through. And it's almost... I think at this point in the episode, even if you don't know what's coming up or anything, and you've not twigged to any other clues, the fact that we've only got about 10 minutes left of this episode, and there's a lot of balls still up in the air, and even though DS9 became a lot more serialised as it went along, we know that this is called The Search Part 1, The Search Part 2. If you've had a look in your TV guide, you know that next week's called The House of Quark. So
yeah.
you're watching the episode going, there's too much for him to wrap up in this next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So the other shoe's got to drop in a minute. If it was modern TV... where everything's serialized, you just think, oh yeah, fair enough, we probably won't get any answers to anything this week. But at this point, we're still
to be fair, even when DS9, we know how serialized DS9 was with its arcs, but you still got answers within fairly quickly. Yes. Things weren't strung out over a whole season till you found out something.
Exactly. The difference is, DS9, even when it's most serialized, there would still be an arc within the episode that would get wrapped up. And there might still be things dangling. But at this point in this episode, you're like, no, so there's not enough time to sort this out. So clearly something's got to happen. I really love where Sisko kicks off with Nechayev. So we get the thing Dax's going to be transferred. Sisko's not happy, and he just goes off on one on her, and she says, "Have you finished? I haven't even begun." And again, if you want to read it in a sort of meta-textual way, that's almost Avery Brooks saying, "Yeah, no, I've not even started yet. You're going to get a lot more of this side of Sisko." And
And she tells him, well, there's no choice. The station is being handed back to the Bajoran. Starfleet is pulling out.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, what about the Bajorans joining Starfleet?
Yeah.
And she goes, well, that's going to be put on hold indefinitely because they're siding with the Romulans against us.
Yeah, there's this thing about... That's an interesting show that I'd like to see, like the Bajoran-Romulan alliance. That would be an interesting one.
I get the impression that Romulus is quite a long way away from here.
Yeah, on the maps you get, it's pretty much the Klingons and the Romulans are on one side of the galaxy, and then the Federation's in between them, so the Romulans and Klingons are on one side, and as soon as Bajorans are on the other. Yeah. So it's long, it'd be hard to get an alliance.
It'd be hard for the Romulans to actually support Bajor.
Yes.
in any form of strike from the Dominion, especially when the Cardassians are joining in as well with the Dominion.
Exactly. And that's
one planet ain't going to last long.
That's what I was going to say, actually, is what Nechayev's describing here is pretty much what happens at the end of Season 5. The Dominion takes the station, and Bajor's left on its own, and the Federation has to pull out of the sector.
Yeah.
It's just that here, they're testing the waters, like, can we get away with this with the Federation? No, you can't. All right, but I bet we can do it with the Cardassians. So they obviously go to Plan B at that point. Garak, this is where I think they get Garak right, actually, where he's like, I've heard this rumour about the Bajorans and the Romulans, and he's kind of G'ing Sisko up, like, oh, what do you think? Do you think maybe we should do this? And that's very similar to what he's like in the Pale Moonlight in Season 6, where it's like, you need something doing, let's have a talk
When we get to the Pale Moonlight, we're doing just one full episode on that one episode.
Absolutely, yeah, that episode.
Yeah, and I think we might have a couple of guests on that one.
Yes.
Because I know Ian will want to join us.
I think he would do, yeah. It's definitely an episode to look into really closely. But the dynamic between Sisko and Garak here, or Sisko and fake Garak here, is very similar to what it'll become there. And then
I wonder if they've looked at this and thought, now this was quite interesting. Where can we go with this? And sort of somebody's written in the margin of the writing book somewhere.
Garak and Sisko, clandestine plots. Let's see what we can do with that at some point. Yeah. And obviously it all kicks off. So basically they're going to try and bomb the entrance to the wormhole to stop the Dominion and everything going through. And at this point, the scenes start to intercut a little bit quicker. Like you get Kira investigating the door, and then it'll really quickly cut to something else, then back to Kira. And I think just on the level of like the language of cinema, subconsciously, that's creating a link between the two things for you. Whatever's behind the door is somehow linked to what's going on here.
Linked to what's going on.
Yeah, you don't know how yet. I mean, you might be starting to have a guess, but yeah, that's very clever. Garak has an absolutely belting line here where he's got him and the Jem'Hadar greet him and he goes, "Oh, haven't they told you about the plan?" And the Jem'Hadar goes, "What plan?" Says, "I pretend to be their friend, then I shoot you." And he shoots him. And that's brilliant. I love it. That's worthy of the real Garak, is that? And then, they bomb the entrance to the wormhole and everything. And just at that point, Kira and Odo get through the door. Odo does his cool shape-shifty thing to open the door.
Yeah, he turns his fingers into keys.
Yeah. And so he can make a key fine, it's just faces. And this is where,
I think he's made his own face.
I think he has. I've always thought, yeah. And the other shoe does drop then, so there was no way you were going to wrap up all this stuff about the wormhole and everything going on. So, of course, it's a simulation. It didn't really happen. I remember at the time I was a little bit disappointed because I'm like, no, I want to see what's going on. But in retrospect, it's a good part of the ongoing story.
But this is like we say, like we weren't used to story arcs like this in TV at this time.
No, I mean,
like DS9 was going into almost unexplored waters with what we were about to do with TV.
I mean, if this was the Next Generation, this would be the equivalent of, Jem'Hadar's your Q-Who episode, so you get introduced to the Borg, then Search Part 1 and 2 could have been your Best of Both Worlds, And for all we knew,
a couple of seasons later,
that could have been it for the Dominion. This could have been the end, and this is all we get.
Yeah.
But obviously, no, DS9's playing the long game. But at the time, bit disappointed. And this is where we find out the female changeling reveals that they are the founders. They want to impose order, basically, on the universe because of the way they've been treated.
Yeah, we were checked wrong by the solids, so we will control all the solids so they can't attack us. Which you can see a point of view.
I mean, it works, you know, to get from
it
point
obviously does work because there's basically, they've got the entire Gamma Quadrant is all cooperating with each other. There's no wars going on.
No, because they'd kill them.
There's trade all over, but none of them actually see the founders.
No, exactly. I mean, you know, from point A to point B, point A is oppression, point B is not oppression. You can do that by starting a galactic empire that rules with an iron fist. That works. That gets you from point A to point B. Whether it's the nicest way of doing it is another question, but you can't deny
the thing is, like, you get the impression, though, that the Gamma Quadrant works fine.
Yeah, well, as long as you're not one of the ones who isn't happy with the way you're being treated.
But yeah, I get the impression that, like, we have had hints, haven't we, that the Dominion have turned up on Worlds, because we saw that in
Sanctuary,
Shadowplay,
yeah.
We saw that in Shadowplay, where the old man left his own world because the Dominion arrived, and it was terrible.
Exactly.
So
it's not all fun and games, but
no,
yeah. So the reason for this elaborate simulation, then, I'm not sure about it, because they say we wanted to see how much you'd sacrifice to avoid a war. So why did they make it so outrageous? Like, presumably...
Well, I've got a theory on this, because, like, we know that from the map that the American Nebula was quite a distance away, yeah?
Yeah.
And we know when the Defiant was taken, around a different planet, the Defiant was taken.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And then Odo's been on the Founder's Homeworld for however many... I get the impression he's been there for weeks, almost.
Maybe. I'd thought, yeah.
I don't think it stays, because Kira is running out of options on how to communicate.
True. Yeah.
She's probably given Odo days, if not a week, just to get to know his people and shapeshift a bit with them. And then you've got that, it's carrying on, and she starts, well, can I get out of here, and when are we leaving? So I get the impression that actually they've had the Defiant crew in these simulators for weeks. Maybe. And I honestly think that they've ran multiple scenarios. I think we're just seeing... I've always thought that we're just seeing one scenario.
Right, okay.
I've always had the feeling that they're playing out... that they've played out multiple scenarios of how they've reacted to the Dominion doing different things.
Right, that makes a lot more sense, because, yeah, it's not like... If the idea is, let's see what they'd sacrifice, you would escalate...
Like, why would you go... How's it going to go if we keep the Romulans out of it?
Yeah, well, maybe
badly.
they've identified the Romulans.
Well, let's see how it'll go if we keep the Romulans in. So I always had the impression that there's actually been several scenarios run, but we're only seeing one of them.
Because
I think they've had them there for weeks.
Yeah, you'd start with more gradual stuff, wouldn't you? You'd start with, how would you feel about, simply not exploring the Gamma Quadrant? Oh, you're okay with that, right? How would you feel about us having a station right next to the other side of the wormhole? Oh, you'd be okay with that? how do you feel about us having a garrison of Jemadar on DS9? And you escalate and escalate and escalate. Yeah. Whereas this one, they just go batshit with it. It's like, okay, so
I've always had the impression that we're only seeing one simulation. That
this is like
we're possibly only seeing the simulation from one person's point of view as well, because they've got. I'm assuming because they go that you're free to beam up to the Defiant. So I'm assuming that they've got pretty much the entire Defiant crew in the
potentially, not just the ones.
Not just our main characters. They've got the characters that we never see that are in engineering and in this place and weapons control that we don't see on screen. So they're running separate simulations on all these different people.
Right? No, I really like that. That's really good. I agree. I'll go with it. So yeah, and that's pretty much. We get this is a bit where this is kind of like. What is it they talk about? Chekhov's gun, where if you have a gun, not Mr. Chekhov's gun, the author Chekhov, where if you have a gun in Act 1 of the story, it has to be fired in Act 3 of the story. And your Chekhov's gun here is them saying no changelings ever harmed another.
Yeah.
And straight away, right.
Well, you also have, though, here, and this is where I think plays off from the first episode where the Jemadar were attacking Odo and all that. And you have Odo starting to say, release them and let them go. And you have the Vorta there saying, no, I don't have to do what you say. And then the founders point out to him, Odo is a founder. You do what he says.
Yeah. Okay. So
and that's where I think it changes from what we see in episode 1, where the Jemadar will attack Odo, to end of episode 2. It is no, Odo is the same as us.
Yeah, and that's it. From this point on, they treat you differently. Yeah.
From this point on, Odo is the founder. Is a god.
Good spot.
And we do see that played out. That is how he's stretched from now on.
You're right. No, excellent. Well spotted. I'd never got that. So yeah, and that's pretty much it. Then we beam up from the planet, and we're not gonna.
Yeah, we assume that that the Jemadar or the founders or the Vortas have been really nice, because we saw the Defiant took a real kick in. But they say, "Oh, your ship's in orbit," so they've obviously moved it. They've moved it from one place to another, and we'll let you go back. And it's all
they're not like, "Oh, is that this is your prototype?" That we'll keep that. Right, so you've only got one. You got none now. But yeah, the changeling, the female changeling, sort of says, "Well, maybe I'll come and visit you, and maybe we're willing to wait until the time is right," sort of thing. So again, and we do keep banging this drum, but at this point, all the Dominion have said is, we don't want you in our territory, and they're not actively looking to start anything at this point. They're not attacking the Alpha Quadrant. As far as we know, they've not made any incursions into the Alpha Quadrant. They've let you go when you've gone in and blown up one of their ships. Even after they warned you not to come through, they've let you go. They've let you take your big warship back, and they've said, we're not going to take any further action at this point. So I'd say
you've really got to look at, like, the Federation really pushed to have a war here.
Yeah, so far, yes, they blew up the Odyssey, but arguably they were provoked in doing that because they had told you not to come into their territory at that point. The Dominion
they specifically said, stay away.
I mean, they have...
And they were making a point.
Yeah,
they have admitted that, like, we've got to assume that New Voyager has been taken over by the Dominion. We don't know if they've killed all the people on New Voyager, but it's definitely under Dominion control by now.
Yeah.
And they've said that we know lots about you because and it gives a list of all the ships that they've destroyed.
They have,
but we don't know if they've killed all the. But they've only killed or attacked anyone in their territory.
Oh, yes, yeah, exactly. The Federation has encroached into their territory. Admittedly, the Federation did so with good intentions. They did it to intend to explore, but at this stage, they've been told in no uncertain terms, you are not allowed in this territory, and we will take action to... We control this territory. We are a huge military force. We are more than capable of defending our territory. Do not come through. We'll see how long that sticks from here. So next time we've got another Voyager Barclay episode. I think it's called Lifeline. Lifeline, I think.
Yeah, Lifeline.
Lifeline we're going to look at, and then I think it's The Abandoned in DS9, another Jemadar episode. So they're going to be good ones to talk about. I'm off to watch Loki, because I've not seen it yet, but...
I'm hoping the Bad Batch has dropped.
You're hoping the Bad Batch has dropped, and we've got...
An early night because I've got me second jab. I get my chip tomorrow.
There you go. And then we've got an England football game on Sunday. So it's all going on. It's...
Yeah, hopefully I'll have my superpowers by tomorrow night.
That's it, you see. It's
That's what I'm expecting from this second jab.
Well, you should do, yeah. I mean, I got mine, but... Yeah, this year's been very much sort of backloaded, like the front half of 2021, not a lot to do. Second half's looking much better. So,
yeah.
Let us know what you think. Send us a tweet at RetrekPod. Email us retrekpod@gmail.com or come and join us on Facebook. Just look for Retrek. And thanks for trekking with us.
We have no spoilers, even though you put the thing up.
I did put a spoiler thing up. Yeah, press that.
Yeah, we had an interview from Rebecca Ronjin, didn't we? But
yeah,
she's not followed the Q school of spoilers, and she said non-disclosure, and all she'd tell us was that they'd finished filming episode 7.
Yeah, well, that's pretty boring, you know. Anyway, I'm sure we'll find out. I feel like a Strange New Worlds trailer can't be too far away.
I think one soon.
But we'll find out. I think
Strange New Worlds... I've got a sneaky feeling Strange New Worlds is going to be the next live-action Trek we get.
I won't bet against it. So no doubt we'll find out. But thanks for trekking with us this time, and we will see you next time on the Retrek.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Fascinating.
Oh, there you go. Bonus content again. So I've not
bonus content again.